Story 1. Well, it's almost Wednesday here in Australia, and no rapture yet. I wouldn't sweat it, guys. Story 2. Last year, a woman tipped some servers more than $1,000 before the eclipse that rapture believers were excited about. Afterwards, she returned and demanded her money back. So, probably after the rapture comes the Karening. Story 3. It's the same thing that happened in 2012. They complain and double down. Their children will suffer the most. I still think about the children in that family who sold everything and drove out to be with their prophet at the end. Story 4. They take the only thing left in their possession and move on. Story 5. Are people really doing that? I've been hearing talk about the rapture for the past few days. It seems like every few months someone predicts a new date that is supposedly fast approaching. What makes this one so special? Story 6. Jesus came down to take people to heaven, but ICE picked him up and no one knows where he is. Story 7. A good friend told me that the day of the rapture cannot be known according to the scriptures. Only God knows the day and the hour, and those who set a date are making a serious mistake. Story 8. Start over the way you do after any disaster. This disaster, however, was self-made. Story 9. What happens to the rest of us? Do we all die in fiery damnation, or do we just carry on without all those insufferable fucking morons spouting shite? I do hope it's the latter. Story 10. Whoa boy, I have a story for you. Remember the year 2000 problem? A local family who believed the rapture and the end times were near convinced the entire clan to sell their homes, cars, and farms. They had a huge hole dug in the hills and brought in 3 shipping containers, welded them together, buried them, and installed a well-constructed ventilation system and a giant bomb shelter hatch. They spent the rest of the money on a generator, AR-15 rifles, crates of ammunition, gas masks, and literal tons of freeze-dried food canisters. They even bought a new family Bible. They had basic cable so they could watch what they believed would be the end of the world. A few months later, when they were broke and nearly homeless, I asked one of them what they planned to do when the generator fuel ran out. They were not smart. Story 11. In all seriousness, people have ended their lives after similar outcomes. It takes a certain degree of mental instability to believe doomsday cult beliefs, and when that worldview is shattered, a person can become fragile and at high risk of harming themselves or others. Story 12. Start planning for the next date. There's always a new prophet with a revised calculation. Story 13. Very few people do. The posts you see on social media are people trying to get views and engagement. The number of people who believe the rapture is coming, let alone sell all their possessions, is only marginally greater than 0. Story 14. Wait. Is this why there was a surge of free, nice stuff on the marketplace over the weekend? Story 15. You described the origin of the Adventist Church. Technically, they were not Christians because of additional revelations and attempts to calculate the date of Christ's return. Christ taught that only God knows the date and instructed people not to try to calculate it, but William Miller attempted to do so, among other things. William realized he had made an error and returned to his previous church, if I recall correctly, but many followers had already given up their careers, plans, and possessions, and some decided to keep the movement going. Story 16. This is just like the 2011 Harold Camping prediction. One of his followers in New York City, Robert Fitzpatrick, spent his entire life savings of $140,000 on Metropolitan Transportation Authority advertising announcing the rapture. Story 17. Keep postponing the date of the rapture until people stop listening to those predicting it. This is similar to what happened in 2012, when many believed the world would end. Story 18. This was not in 2025 but a few years earlier. My grandmother did something similar. She bought boxes of food, water, medicine, and other supplies. When the day arrived, most of the supplies were fine. Some food attracted ants and small insects, but the damage was minimal. She did not buy groceries for a while, which she found amusing. Story 19. My aunt and uncle did this twice. My dad said he even showed them the Bible verse that says no one would know except God. Story 20. I do not know. I am kind of disappointed that none of them are leaving me their possessions. I am going into the lake of fire, and they are going to heaven. Story 21. They will seek government assistance, such as food stamps and similar programs. Story 22. My hunch is that no one sold anything. They might have posted that they did, but just as they do every Sunday, they go on as normal when no one is watching. Story 23. Most people probably imagine a personal rapture. I remember, as a kid, I loved my grandfather a lot. We always went fishing and hunting together. He died, and one Sunday the preacher said, "No one is in heaven yet." I thought, what on earth? Last week you said my grandfather was there, and now he is not. I guess when Jesus comes back for the rapture, everyone who has died and was saved will be instantly in heaven, as if they had been there forever but not a second before. People giving away their possessions should be seen as a sign of an impending suicide attempt. Story 24. I heard a report about this on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation years ago. It said that the brain protects people from the reality of what they have done, and that this can lead to beliefs such as, the rapture has been postponed because I did this, or God needs me to do something else. Story 25. This is the same thing the early Christians did 2,000 years ago when they believed Jesus would return soon and gave away their possessions and lived on charity. It is the first account of the early churches taking up an offering, and it was done for precisely that reason. Story 26. I guess they have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Story 27. Most people try to rebuild or double down on the belief that you have to be tough when starting over after giving up everything. Story 28. They set up a tax-free religious charity and resume grifting. Story 29. They end up in the same boat as almost everyone else, living from paycheck to paycheck and exploited by the numerical forces that govern our society. Story 30. People who are that deeply involved live more communally. In cults, the leader forces followers to give all their money to him, leaving them dependent on him. Story 31. Does anyone know a Christian who is giving away a car? Mine is in poor condition. Story 32. They will make it everyone else's problem, as they always do when they are wrong and people's feelings are hurt. Story 33. I do not think people actually sell their stuff. That is nonsense, and in all likelihood anyone who believes that does not have good stuff anyway. Story 34. Do you have any idea what time this rapture is happening? I shaved my testicles for this. Story 35. They always say it is happening, but they get the date wrong. I am 43 and it feels like every 5 years or so some earth-ending crisis like a rapture is predicted. Story 36. Some people wake up. Others switch off and bury their heads in the sand. My mother is a Jehovah's Witness. I grew up as one but never understood it. Years later I researched them and found evidence they were lying. I showed my mother, and she freaked out, started cleaning all day, and acted stressed. She then made excuses about what I had found. She couldn't handle the truth. I stopped bringing it up because I was sure that if I kept pushing she would have a breakdown when she realized her religion was a cult and that she had wasted her life on it. So I let her live in her delusional bubble. Story 37. Every person I have encountered who was extremely excited about the rapture being imminent was 100% sure they would be among the chosen few. They never imagined they might be left behind. Story 38. They have done the same thing the 6 other times this has happened over the past 20 years. They rationalize their failures and misplaced trust. Story 39. Dawn is nigh. Zorp the Surveyor approaches, and all earthly debts will be repaid to the original source of life in the universe. Last call for donuts. Story 40. They live with the consequences of their actions. I have lost count of how many times someone has said the rapture was going to happen. Every time, people think they must give everything away as if that will make them perfect in God's eyes for the event. These are the same people who believe giving the homeless man on the street $5 will get them into heaven when they die. The Bible makes 2 things very clear that most people tend to overlook. First, we will not know when it will happen, as stated in Matthew chapter 24 verses 36 through 38. Second, we are not supposed to worry about when it will happen, as stated in Matthew chapter 25 verse 34. Instead, we are to do the work we are supposed to do. Story 41. You will know neither the time nor the place. God mocks all who ignore his scripture. If you spend your days advocating for guns and spreading hate, denying coronavirus disease 2019 and spreading deadly misinformation, or trying to predict his mighty action explicitly against his instruction, God has a hilarious outcome for you in mind. The Christian Lord is genuinely one of the most savage roasters in the game. You just have to look from his perspective to see it. Story 42. I will tell you what they will not do, and that is critically examine their religious beliefs. Story 43. Make up a date for the next one, and act as if nothing went wrong. Story 44. People probably asked why it was important to get rid of their possessions if they expected to be raptured and ownership on earth would no longer matter. It matters when you are not raptured, though. Story 45. They feel embarrassed for half a second, then complain and try to get it back by any means. Story 46. But they have already sold or gotten rid of all their material possessions. Are people actually doing that? Story 47. The rapture is said to be happening on September 23rd, but the Bible says only the Father knows when the day will come. Even if you were certain the rapture would occur in a few days, why would you sell all your possessions? You cannot buy things in heaven with that money. Story 48. Most likely blame liberals, immigrants, and the poor. Story 49. Pick a new date and post a bunch of stuff on Facebook about repenting. At least that's what my sister-in-law does every time one of her end-of-the-world dates passes. Story 50. I did not get a chance to ask. Why are you selling your belongings? If you will be raptured, you will not need them. If you will not be raptured, you will be left without them. You cannot take money with you, so why sell anything? Do you actually believe you will be raptured? Story 51. What is the basis for their choosing tomorrow? I only started hearing about this today. Story 52. People can't actually believe in the rapture, can they? I feel like it's just a convoluted joke someone made up out of boredom. Story 53. Where in the Bible is the rapture even substantiated? These intransigent evangelicals are denouncing the teachings of their God, Jesus, who expounds on the end. You don't know the day or the hour. Their personal effects were sold of their own volition so they could exhibit some prudence and repurchase them after rereading their Bibles. Story 54. This happened in the 1970s. People maxed out their credit cards and spent recklessly. A week later, they were left stranded. Some took their own lives and others suffered mental breakdowns. Can you imagine? Story 55. Hopefully, they realize they should not believe everything they hear. Story 56. I assume they will buy balloons with the leftover money and do it themselves. Story 57. Here is one I do not get. These prepper assholes who think they will go to heaven after hoarding supplies, including guns and bullets to shoot their neighbors, all to see the rapture in person. This is fucking disconnected insanity. Story 58. Let's be honest with ourselves. Who cares? The people who would do that aren't worth a damn anyway. Story 59. You play the Blondie song as loud as you can and swear you were just talking about a listening party. Story 60. I am not sure, but I know what I am going to do. Point and laugh. Story 61. Most will shrug their shoulders and move on. For the few who are truly desperate, those who sold their livelihoods or feel abandoned, the outcome can be suicide, sometimes involving their children. Story 62. What rapture is happening this time? Which cult is making the claim? Story 63. I am upset that they got rid of their possessions for no reason. I hope they did not discard anything important. Story 64. Hopefully they will realize how fucking dumb they are and actually educate themselves. Story 65. Laughing out loud. Why do I read this everywhere? Didn't Jesus say somewhere in the Bible that no one knows the day and time it will happen? A lot of people don't take their religion seriously, it seems. Story 66. Do they really get rid of everything? I mean, they are extreme, so applying logic may not make sense, but if they believe in the rapture, why bother trying to sell your possessions? Cash will not be useful up there. While it might be tempting to splurge before the rapture, is it worth selling everything to get cash to spend when you expect far better things afterward? I understand spending savings or maxing out credit cards, but getting rid of everything seems unnecessary. At best, they could donate their belongings, but if they expect the rapture, any remaining possessions are effectively irrelevant. Story 67. I guess they will use the money from selling their possessions, money they said was to get into heaven, to check themselves into a psychiatric facility. Just kidding. They will use it to sue whoever started this rapture nonsense, all while denying any wrongdoing. Maybe they will blame transgender people. Either way, they will take no personal accountability. Story 68. They sit there and look stupid while everyone else laughs at them. Story 69. Life is difficult for a while, but they rebuild and are mostly fine. Story 70. They console themselves that at least they will be ready for the next supposed date. I'm sure there will be another date already earmarked. Story 71. I do not know who will protect us this time. Last time we had Macho Man. Story 72. Let us hope they rapture themselves just like in Jonestown. The Lord is hungry and needs to feed on fresh souls. Story 73. I know it is not going to be learning a damn lesson. It is going to be someone else who is at fault. Story 74. My neighbor has experienced 3 rapture events in the past 4 years. Yes, they belong to a cult. The last one was serious. He sold his car, quit his job, and insisted his whole family be with him because apparently if you are not all together they might be raptured to different heavens. When nothing happened, he said he sold the car because he did not need it and quit his job for something better. I am not making this up. I hope he has made enough poor financial decisions this time that he will have to move out. Story 75. Show me any rapture supporter who liquidated. Even if they totally believe, they cannot take the proceeds with them. If they do dispose of their belongings, did they really think it was worth it for the chance to win? Story 76. Go back to Leslie Knope and reserve the park a few months down the road. Story 77. They announced that the rapture was rigged by anti-fascist activists and start a crowdfunding campaign. Story 78. Recently, someone returned to a restaurant where they had previously dined and tried to get back the $1,000 tip they had left the server. Story 79. A better question is what people have done when told they had a terminal disease and only a couple of months to live. That scenario has happened more than once. Story 80. Hopefully, they will build a better life despite their disillusionment. Story 81. I do not know what they are going to do, but I am going to laugh. Story 82. When you lose everything, you either give up or start building again from scratch. Story 83. They beg their Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, for a handout. Story 84. According to their beliefs, people who die by suicide go to the same place as sex workers and rock stars, which they imagine is more fun than expected. Story 85. Can someone please let me know when the rapture is supposed to happen? I am trying to plan my day and it is getting difficult. Okay. Thank you. Story 86. Plot twist. The rapture happened and we were all left behind because we're just that mid. Story 87. Does anyone know what time the rapture is? I do not want to be on the road when many cars have no drivers. Story 88. Look into what happened to families during the year 2000 and in 2012. I will bet 2012 was more related to the lingering effects of the recession in 2008. Many people spent or liquidated every penny they had, and when the world did not end, they had to rebuild their lives. Story 89. They always act surprised and then try to claw back every mortal possession they gave away, like a scurrying rat. Then they give it all to the television pastor who explains why the rapture was moved to 2026. Story 90. They pull themselves up by their bootstraps assuming they did not sell the boots. They will have my thoughts and prayers, or rather my spellcasting and chanting. Story 91. So which was it? Did the rapture not happen? Or did it happen and most Christians were simply left behind? Story 92. The man who mows my lawn just showed up. Apparently he's gay too. Story 93. Go on the same welfare they used to complain that all the colored people mooched off, probably. But it is different this time. It is a white couple with 6 children and a $120,000 lifted truck going on welfare. Not a single black mother working 3 jobs to keep her child alive. So it is totally okay now. Story 94. Why would you sell your worldly possessions if you are going to heaven? Story 95. I wish they had given it to me. I would have kept it. I know keeping a religious nut job's money seems dangerous, but money is the root of all evil. Story 96. I think this would be an excellent time to offer to buy their houses for pennies on the dollar and to test the faith they claim to have. Story 97. Why get rid of everything when you are going to leave the earth anyway? Story 98. They will probably try to bring about the rapture themselves. Preppers are hoping for that day. Story 99. I suppose they'll need to have faith that everything will turn out okay and accept and learn from their choices, right? Story 100. They do the same thing other people do when they believe the end is coming. They either end up homeless and couch surfing or they cause their own rapture. Story 101. They become angry, sad, or embarrassed, often all three. They will savage whatever they can get back, cry, and do their best to continue. Story 102. They blamed the Democrats for their hardships and postponed the date to some time in the future. The church rallied and provided supplies to those who had nothing. Most people, though, kept their homes and other major possessions. Deep down they knew it was nonsense. I lived that life in the 1980s and 1990s. There was a new rapture date every year or two. Story 103. Maybe the rapture, such as it was, did happen earlier today, right on cue as advertised. Best 2 out of 3. Story 104. I will tell a story told to me about a man in prison. He truly believed he was going home. He was serving a long sentence and was only a third of the way through. He said he had spoken to Christ, who told him he would go home on a specific day I will call Liberty Day. The day before Liberty Day, he gave all his possessions to other inmates. On Liberty Day, he went to the gates and told the guards to let him out because Christ had told him he was to go home that day. The guards laughed. The inmate kept repeating that Christ had told him he would go home. After a while, the guards realized he was serious and told him to return to his housing unit. After some back and forth, he returned, grabbed a chair, stood on it and said, "All right, everyone, you know who you are. I want all my things back." Story 105. Maybe they can rapture themselves instead of waiting for Sky Daddy to do it. Story 106. A lot of people end up rebuilding from scratch. Some find new faith communities. Others become disillusioned and leave religion altogether. I imagine it is awkward to explain during a job interview why you no longer have a car. Story 107. The book of Revelation described events occurring in the world at the time and was not intended to predict a future end of the world. Contemporary readers believed it applied to them. Many Christian thought leaders in the early church did not consider it canonical, and it was regarded as an unusual apocalyptic book. Story 108. They will feel foolish and embarrassed until the next time they fall for some religious nonsense. Story 109. They will blame the Democrats. The rapture did not happen because of the Democrats' wickedness. If they were more pious, Jesus would have whisked us all to heaven by now. We must make them believe. Story 110. The cult leaders will say God is not ready yet and set a new date. This time they will claim it is for real. Story 111. Hey, if anyone wants to get rid of all their filthy lucre, I will take it. Story 112. I don't even know there was a rapture. Can anyone resume it? Story 113. I was reading about this and couldn't help but wonder. Why sell if it is the rapture instead of giving things away? Story 114. I can hear it already. That was just a practice run. The truly real rapture is actually on a made-up date soon with a made-up agenda or else. Story 115. Look ridiculously foolish while the rest of us point and laugh. Then they will rationalize it somehow and go on pretending. Story 116. I'll be staying here. I'm yearning for the peace and quiet once these evangelicals leave this rock. Story 117. They usually quietly rebuild. Some join another group, some double down and claim the date was miscalculated. And others face the brutal reality of realizing they burned every bridge and asset for nothing. It is heartbreaking because the aftermath is not dramatic like the prediction. It is just lonely, broke, and painfully human. Story 118. They just go back to being their usual hypocritical selves. Story 119. Live a happy life free from the trappings of materialism? Story 120. Why would they bother selling? You can't take it with you. Story 121. I keep seeing the rapture being discussed. Why do people think it will happen tomorrow? Story 122. They keep behaving like complete morons. Story 123. You should probably read the part of the Bible where Paul specifically said not to do that. Story 124. Blame something random instead of the person who gave them the date. Then ask that same person for a new date. Story 125. Typically, they say they forgot to add 40 days for the flood and repeat it on November 2nd. Story 126. What made me laugh was certain evangelicals thinking they qualify for heaven. Story 127. Bad news, everyone. The rapture has not happened. See you all again next year. Story 128. What is this rapture shit I am suddenly hearing about today? Does this meme come up every 10 years or so? God did not give any of us a heads up this time. Story 129. I don't think people go to those extremes these days as an insurance policy against bad information. In the past, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses sold everything they owned, gave the money away, went out to a field, and waited for another failed rapture. Story 130. After it does not happen, they come up with an illogical reason why they did it, but it still makes sense because God told them so. Story 131. The psychological trauma must be fracturing. How do clergy keep congregations from fleeing? Do they have revised strategies for dealing with the fallout? Story 132. This happened to my stepmother. She was completely convinced that the world was ending on December 21st, 2012. She sold all of her possessions, spent all of her money, and burned every bridge she had. Sometime soon after, she took her own life. Story 133. I never understood this whole rapture thing. I understand the concept, but why bother planning for it? After all, you will be dead or gone anyway, so why does it matter whether you divest all your worldly possessions? People should think more logically about this. Story 134. This video by Internet Historian deals with something similar. Story 135. We are going to see a lot of desperate backtracking over material and financial losses, and many people dialing up their inner Karen to demand an oopsie-daisy apology for those moves. I also think people are unprepared for those truly in the throes of this psychosis. When a wave of videos recorded as evidence for later began appearing, I felt my emergency medical services colleagues collectively sigh and tense up at how exhausting the next few days would likely be. We will probably see a significant number of people who refuse to snap out of it because of how deeply they sank into the delusion. This is why some mental health professionals worry we will see more than a few family annihilators. People so deep in psychosis that they think they must take revenge on those who left them and their family, or those who believe they need to prepare their family for an imagined inevitable departure. Some of these people have fully committed themselves to this delusion. Story 136. Some people, typically those who still have family or friends to return to, peel off from the group. The remaining members double down. You didn't pray, read the Bible, or believe hard enough. You fail to understand the symbols. A compaction cycle follows, leaving them more devoted than ever. Story 137. Nothing in the Bible says to sell or give away all of one's mortal possessions, since that would be judging the person who might be left behind. Note that not all Christian denominations believe in a rapture. This passage is used by some who do. Matthew 24 verses 38 to 41. 38 For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage up to the day Noah entered the ark. 39 They knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 42 Men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. 41 Two women will be grinding with a hand mill. One will be taken and the other left. Story 138. Why would people sell their belongings because they think they are going to be raptured? It's not as if they can take money with them. Story 139. Ask Robert Fitzpatrick about it around 2011, when Harold Camping was predicting the end of days. Story 140. The only place I have seen or heard any talk about the rapture is here on Reddit. Where is everyone getting this? Story 141. Point and laugh like every other rapture day since it was made up. Story 142. Maybe they will start believing in the one true God, the flying spaghetti monster. Story 143. I know what I will be doing. Laughing at them for being stupid. Story 144. We all get to point and laugh at them for having faith. Story 145. The rapture already happened today. It is a shame that so few people were selected and remained unnoticeable on an ordinary day. Story 146. Most people who believe in God do so because another person raised them to believe it in childhood or taught them about God when they were vulnerable. In other words, the majority were socialized into belief. Imagine we removed all knowledge of God and prevented anyone in the future from teaching others about God, directly or indirectly. The only way anyone could then know about God would be if God actually existed and revealed itself to everyone simultaneously and visibly. How many people do you think would believe in God then? Story 147. They start a grift to convince others that the rapture is coming, setting a date far enough in the future to collect donations that triple their losses. It is one of the classic multi-level marketing scams. Story 148. Why would you need to sell anything? Do they think they can take the money with them? Story 149. Why would you sell or get rid of your possessions if you believe you are going to be raptured? Do these people think they can bring their money to heaven? Story 150. Hopefully they didn't lose much because most of those people already lost their possessions to their television evangelists and churches. Story 151. Is there a Bible verse that says the rapture will come when no one can predict it? Story 152. Since they have successfully done what Jesus told them to do, they should be happy Christians now. Story 153. Hey, today is not over. I could still be raptured by dinner time. Story 154. I lived in San Francisco in the 1970s and a good friend was part of the People's Temple. They went to Guyana and let me sublet their furnished apartment. I inherited all their belongings. This was not the rapture, but another group of zealots led astray by a psycho. Many People's Temple members who went to Guyana sold their possessions and gave the money to the temple. So even if they found a way to leave Georgetown, they did not have money for a flight home or a place to live if they returned to the United States. They also did not have access to their passports. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.